Hey, Tim Frisch with A Frisch Perspective. I've been doing some videos covering Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and I want to continue that here with Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16, where Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." The first part of this sermon has been talking about what are the characteristics of a believer. He started out with the Beatitudes, talking about the inner heart of a believer, the character traits that inwardly are inside of someone who follows Jesus. He goes on to talk about how people who follow Jesus will be persecuted. And here he's talking about being salt of the earth and light of the world. I have a few points that come to my mind here as I think about what Jesus is saying. The first is in verse 13, where he talks about us being the salt of the earth. A lot of people have different thoughts on what he's referring to there. Salt is a preserving element, and as Christians, we certainly should be people who have a preserving effect in the world. But what he really brings out here is that if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. So clearly Jesus is bringing out here that we as his followers who are salt of the earth need to have flavor. We need to be distinct. If you're salt and you don't have flavor, you're really not good for anything. So the idea of being salt is being different than the world around you. We really do as Christians stand out, or we should if we're following Jesus. But in the context of persecution, I think what's brought out here is that it's easy for us to not want to stand out. But Jesus says you should stand out as Christians. He goes on to say, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all that are in the house." So Jesus knows that if we are his followers, we identify with him and we're following what he tells us to do, we're going to stand out in the world, and it's tempting to hide that and not want to stick out in any way. But Jesus says you don't take light and put it under a basket, you let the light shine. That's the point of light. It should be shining and giving light. And so my followers should be standing out, they should be distinct, and they should be shining in this world, giving light to the world. So those are the first 2 points, that we should be different or distinct, like salt, and we should also be public, like light. We as Christians should stand out in this world and not hide that. But the third point is something that should really give us pause. We should always ask, what is it that causes us as Christians to stand out? A lot of people, I think, miss something here because they think as long as I'm different than people around me, then that shows that I'm really doing what Jesus wants. But there's something he says here in verse 16 that I think we really do have to pay attention to. He says, "In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." What's going to really stand out about Jesus' followers, according to Jesus, is their good works. In Titus 2:14, Paul describes Jesus' people as those who are zealous for good works. So if we're really following Jesus the way he's talking about here, we should be people who are characterized by our good works. That's an important distinction because we don't want to just stand out because we dress in a weird way or we talk different than other people, although there might be some differences there. But what really causes us to stand out as Christians is that we are people who demonstrate a change of heart and a change in our lives, and therefore our lives are characterized by goodness, just the way Jesus was. So the third point that he's giving here, aside from being distinct and being public with our faith in Christ, is also to be good. And it reminds me of something I tell my youngest daughter, who loves the movie E.T., and I quote that often to her when I bring her to school. I'll say to her, "Be good," because that's what E.T. in her favorite movie says. And it's a reminder to her that when she goes to school, she needs to try to be obedient, be good. But you know what? Jesus really is telling his followers here, they should be good. So we as Christians should be distinct. We should also be public and be willing to stand out for following Jesus. But what should really stand out about our lives is that we follow Jesus and he has changed our heart and our lives are characterized by his goodness. So those are some thoughts about being salt and light according to Jesus and his Sermon on the Mount. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below, but thank you for taking some time to listen to this little message brought to you from A Frisch Perspective.